So, welcome everyone to another insightful Global Legal Tech Talks. My name is Frances Anderson. I'm the CEO of NetLaw Media, and I'm delighted to welcome you all here today, where we're going to continue our review of another country and their innovation journey. So, today we'll be unleashing the future, looking at the innovation in Saudi Arabia. So, Saudi Arabia has a bold AI vision to dominate the AI landscape, launching a 40 billion tech fund focusing on AI, with an emphasis on cloud computing and digital infrastructure. The KSA has stated its ambition to become a global and regional AI hub. Today, we have 6 special guests with us, where we'll be discussing this and much more. And leading today's session is Professor Richard Susskind, who will be chairing the session and who will bring you into I'll be working alongside them to bring you into the debate and they will answer any questions that you may have nearer to the end. So as this session is live, if you'd like to speak to them or if you'd like to speak to Richard or the additional panel members and ask them a question, please do so through the chat, the Q&A function, which is at the bottom of the screen, or raise your hand, and I will literally bring you in, as I mentioned, into the discussion. So now moving forward, our chair of today's session is Professor Richard Susskind, OBE KC, who is an author, speaker, and independent advisor to international professional firms, general counsel, and national governments. His main area of expertise is the future of legal services, with particular reference to the impact of information technology. And he has specialized in legal technology since the early 1980s. So welcome, Richard, and thank you again to everyone who has joined us. And now I'm delighted to hand the running over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Frances, and thank you for explaining to everyone how old I am. That's very helpful. In fact, I started very young. I started in technology when I was 3. That's not true, but it's really good to be with all of you. What we try to do, as Frances has said, is travel the world and get a sense across many jurisdictions of what's going on in relation to innovation and technology. And we really have got some great experts around the table to help us today. I'm going to leave it to them each to introduce themselves. So, Catherine, can you just give us your snapshot bio? Let us know who you are.
I will. Thank you, Richard, and thank you, NetLaw. I'm Catherine Wetman. I'm a partner of Pinson Masons, a former alma mater of Richard's as well. And I am the head of the Middle East for Pinson Masons. I am based in Dubai, but cover our offices in Dubai, UAE, well, the rest of the UAE, Doha and Riyadh, where I am today. I'm not with Omar, but I am in Riyadh today at COP16 and delighted to be here. Thank you.
Great to have you with us. Thank you. Omar, you're almost next door to one another, but introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. My name is Omar Al-Mudarra. I'm a Saudi lawyer. I've practiced law for more than 25 years, mostly as general counsel with major financial institutions, including my recent role with Rajhi Bank, the largest retail bank in the Middle East. I have since opened my own law office, specializing in banking litigation and trying to introduce innovative approaches to legal practice in the kingdom. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Amir.
Hi, delighted to be here. Amir Mehdi. So I was in private practice as a technologist for 10 years and last 13 years spent as global CIO for Barclays Legal. Left there a few months ago, and I've been doing some consulting work, including in the kingdom.
Thank you. And Jack?
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Jack Diggle. I run Deloitte's legal management consulting practice globally. For the past 2 or 3 years, I've been very heavily involved in a number of digital transformation projects in KSA, both with private sector and with kind of government-related entities.
Thank you. And Laura, finally. I'm not sure I'm hearing from Laura. She seems to be frozen. Is that the same with the other participants?
It looks frozen to me.
We'll come back to her then. Let's Laura, wave to us when you're back. In the meantime, let's start at zoom out a little bit. Frances mentioned the more general commitment to AI and advanced technology. Omar, I wonder if we could start with you and just give us a sense the extent to which that more general enthusiasm, Laura will introduce you in 2 seconds, we're in mid-flight, with that more general enthusiasm, is it seeping into the world of legal practice and the courts? Just give us a sense of whether or not the legal world is an emerging and innovative one.
Well, I'm as a user with the court system in Saudi Arabia. I can say that AI is still right now is the mainstream or is being used at a high level. But I think what we are having in Saudi Arabia is a good foundation for any adoption of advanced technologies like AI. We have a really very great court system. We have not only adoption of technology, we have also a standardization of contracts. So many retail contracts is already standardized, digitized, and this will have access to justice very easy. And this will have an impact to generating data that is necessary for adoption of AI and other advanced technologies in the kingdom.
That's a great start for us. So the infrastructure is there, all ready to go, as it were. Laura, can you introduce yourself just for a few seconds and then give us your general sense? We're at the stage now where we're just painting a broad picture of the impact of technology, but generally, are you finding that the legal world is emerging as innovative in KSA?
Yes, I think, as you know, Saudi Arabia is investing heavily on research and innovation. And from what I understand, they intend to invest about 2.5% of their GDP to the research and innovation sector. Also, as part of their vision 2030, they aim to get at like 20% digital economy contributions by 2025. And I said the other day as well, Saudi Arabia's population is quite young, and they are extremely tax savvy, and they have this project called the Fuel Project, where they are training their youth in technology. So there's a huge space for legal tech and technology in Saudi Arabia, and in a nutshell.
Okay, that's great. Jack, can you drill down a little bit into law for us now? We've heard that the investments there, the infrastructure is emerging. What are you seeing in law?
Yeah, so Richard, I think with the legal functions we've been working with, I think there's a bit of a split between the kind of the private sector and the government related entities. And I think particularly as it comes to some of the kind of the giga projects, the kind of cornerstone of kind of 2030, these are projects moving at a colossal speed. And I think what is...
1 second, Jack, Laura, go and mute. That's great. Good. Back to Jack.
Yeah, and I think that we've touched on the kind of the cultural willingness already, but I think there is a kind of necessity point here that these giga projects cannot be delivered with the sort of throughput that is needed through legal teams and kind of areas of kind of contracting or kind of risk management without technology. So there is a necessity that makes it absolutely kind of critical that legal tech is adopted. But I like very much, Omar, what you said earlier. It still means you have to get the basics right. You can't put technology when there's no process, when there's no standardization. So a lot of the basics that are really true elsewhere in the world about those kind of key critical factors need to be in place before technology implementation.
Thank you, Jack. Catherine, your point of view.
Well, yeah, so on a macro level, just to kind of echo what Omar and Laura were saying, I think at a top level, innovation is core to everything that's happening. Laura mentioned Vision 2030, and in fact, AI is part of Vision 2030 to diversify away and therefore generate revenues from AI. It's one of the drivers. I think adding more statistics to what Laura said, by 2030, AI is projected to contribute 12% of Saudi Arabia's GDP. And I really liked the statement when Saudi's Data and AI Authority was founded a couple of years ago. It was launched under a theme of data is the new oil of the 21st century. So really that movement away and the use of data so that authorities around, as someone else said about the funds, there was another fund set up in earlier this year in June to invest in semiconductor companies. And just picking up on the education point, apparently 75% of the Saudi population is knowledgeable about AI concepts. I'm not too sure many other countries could boast such a large number, and 86% of universities in the country have degrees relating to AI, and 38,000 students recently have gained AI-related degrees. So they are really is all encompassing. You see it in everyday life, personally, professionally. Everything is controlled through the use of technology. I mean, as Laura said, I was going to use the same word, savvy, very digitally savvy nation. So yeah, a huge.
That's hugely helpful.
Huge.
So just trying to summarize before, Amir, I'm just going to ask you to think about this too. What I'm hearing is that strategically and as a matter of policy, there's huge investment in AI and huge commitment to technology. I think what Jack said was significant. In order to cope with this massive technological change, you require a legal system, lawyers, courts, and so forth, that are able to work effectively and efficiently. And I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth, Jack, by saying that the lawyers will need to be technologically empowered and enabled if they're going to meet the needs of this rapidly progressing society, technologically speaking. What I'm not yet getting is a sense of how the legal profession is responding and how much work there's to be done to ensure that legal services are delivered in a way that matches the more general aspirations. Amir, is that something you can help with?
Yeah, no, I think just pondering on the points, I think agree with most of them. There is a significant change that Saudi is going through right now, and the vision is fantastic. And from privately and publicly, on the government basis, there are some real amazing sort of vision that they've got. I think the question now is around execution of that. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. 2030 vision, we're approaching 25. It's 5 years, and there's still lots of work to be done on that on the ground. And I think I was there in Riyadh last month and speaking to a number of firms, and I think they're still grappling with how do they meet that. And I think on the ground there are it's a mixed bag of some, the tech savvy bit, they're wanting to learn and to execute, yes, but on the other side there is still they don't have the infrastructure there at times. I was speaking to a large law firm there, and they still have a word processing team, and if anyone, when we worked in law firms, that was something that 20 years ago we used to have word processing teams. So I think that there is a real sort of it's a balance at the moment on how they can move forward at the speed that they want to, but then back to the point that Jack was saying, actually having those building blocks to be able to that foundation to be able to execute on this sort of great vision.
And part of the foundation must be the ability to contract effectively, to regulate appropriately, to have dispute resolution mechanisms that are proportionate to the issues that arise in technology. Jack, dipping down a bit more into technology, what are people asking you most for? And this could be in-house counsel, it could be law firms. Just give us a sense of what you're finding as the legal technology in which there's greatest interest.
Yeah, and I'll speak probably specifically about legal departments. I have not worked with law firms in the region, but I think we're seeing sort of two things. I think one is just getting the basics right around document management and data management. I think there's a huge importance on just having control of the kind of core legal documentation. I think where we're seeing the biggest need though beyond that is definitely in the kind of the contract space, and both to support contracting at scale and at pace. But I think, with the huge focus and emphasis at the moment in the kingdom on effective delivery of projects, I think kind of post-war contract management tools are absolutely kind of critical to be able to evidence the successful delivery and good use of money of the huge kind of procurement activity that's going on at the moment. So if there's a single greatest technology right now, it's probably around the kind of pre and post signature contract management tool set.
That's very helpful. Omar, I'm going to ask you about the court shortly, but just before we get there, can you give us a sense of the shape of the legal profession, the players, the mindset? Just give us a snapshot. You live and breathe in this world, so I just want to give the listener some sense of the environment.
Yeah, of course. Everyone in Saudi Arabia is, like has been mentioned, that familiar with advanced technologies in AI and etc. However, when we talk about local lawyers, they are not taking the lead yet. And I think if there is any change going to happen, it's going to be from outside of the profession and probably from the government. The government always been taking the lead in many initiatives across the sectors. And I don't think legal profession will be an exception. So I think there will be, and like what Jack has already said, that the public sector and private sector is not in sync, basically. Maybe, I'm not sure if I understood you, Jack, correctly, but there is, and it's the same with the legal profession. There is no sync between the two. And last year we have seen that a big conference organized by the Ministry of Justice, bringing experts from all over the world talking about AI, data analytics, and this was really a very advanced event. Nobody expected, but it's been organized by the government, and this will give you the mindset of what the Ministry of Justice, government overall, are thinking about, the ambitious plans. However, local lawyers maybe it's not up to speed. Recently, the government allowed international law firms to open in the kingdom, allowing them even to enter into the litigation practice, which was always limited to Saudis. And I think with this change, I think a new innovation and new practices and new advanced operations in the legal profession will be introduced slowly to the Saudi market.
That's very helpful. Catherine, you are one of the leaders of Pinson Masons, one such firm. Do you want to give us a sense from your point of view about the technology you're using or the demand that you're finding?
Yeah, definitely. And yes, we're one of those foreign lawyers with a license working alongside firms like Omar. And I think you know, the ability to use legal tech that we've used elsewhere, I think is quite exciting, actually. And I think the whole, I think Jack mentioned the word efficiency. I mean, the use of technology for efficiency in delivering legal services is a very attractive proposition. And I think from our perspective, operating in the kingdom, being able to harness the excitement, enthusiasm of the young Saudis that are working with us and getting involved in developing legal tech to be able to use to assist our clients, and largely they're international clients coming into the kingdom where they may have had the benefit of some of that legal tech elsewhere. I'm quite excited by, actually, and I think it's something we're going to be able to do and will do more of. So case management, completely agree. That documentation, contract management, lease management. I mean, there's a lot anyway. I mean, leases, there's a lot that is done centrally by the government and everything's online there. So it's kind of marrying what we do normally within a very different environment, and there are a number of principles that will apply whereby using legal tech from somewhere, it is definitely not one size fits all, but also there's a number of other things that you've just got to bear in mind, the Islamic principles being number one of those, of how you use that tech and how it gets used within the judiciary system, which I think is an interesting thing too.
Thank you, Catherine. Laura, from your point of view, can you give your sense of the legal tech, the level of legal tech activity, and who are the major players?
Yeah, I'm going to be a bit of a Debbie Downer here. I don't see legal tech being used as much in Saudi Arabia, because my feeling is that, you see, in countries like the US or in the UK, there's a sense of doom and gloom, you know. We're going to be replaced by probably not by AI, not immediately, but by lawyers who know how to use AI. But you see, in Saudi Arabia, there is no such fear. The lawyers are in high demand. There's so much work, even with law firms. When we ask for legal opinion from law firms in Saudi Arabia, there is a waiting list. They don't just jump on the next task, because you know what, they are overwhelmed. So as a result, the law firms and lawyers in Saudi Arabia, I don't think they have this push to, you know, get these tools, because also they are extremely expensive. I get these calls from, you know, various people asking, oh, okay, so if we bought a legal tech, if we got a license, do you think the clients will pay for it? Will assume the fees, you know, can we charge you extra because we're using legal tech? As an in-house lawyer, my opinion is that if you're using legal tech, that means you're going to charge me less, not more. So going back to your point, I don't think they have, I mean, the lawyers themselves are really eager to use legal technology in general, because like we said, they're all young, they're tax savvy. But having said this, the law firms, they don't have this push. They don't need to like reinvent the wheel. They already have so many clients, and the demand is, yeah. So there's so much work in Saudi Arabia, as we know. Also, another thing that just occurred to me, the LLMs, the Arabic language LLMs, they're not too, I mean, there would need to be more tools in Arabic, I think, for Saudi legal departments and Saudi law firms to adopt a legal tech tool. As far as I know, in this region, there's only one tool that has Arabic. So yeah, these are my thoughts. I think for contract management, yes, they are adopting it, but for anything else, I don't see it.
Well, I'm going to go to Omar to respond, because I know he wants to, and then Amir to bring all this thinking together. But what we're hearing is very interesting. We're hearing about this remarkable infrastructure. We're hearing about a huge amount of activity. We're hearing about willingness. But we're also hearing that the law firms aren't motivated, as I understand it from Laura, and that might be local firms, it might be firms such as Catherine's, but perhaps less motivated to deploy the technology. But we can discuss this. Big picture, my feeling, I'm going to get to Jack as well. Big picture, my feeling is that law firm to meet the needs of the kingdom, lawyers, like all others, are going to have to be streamlined and optimized and technology enabled, and that's part of achieving your overall vision. But let me go to Omar, then Amir, and then Jack.
Yeah, I just want to also comment to Laura. I agree totally with what she said. However, I just want to add one thing. Maybe one of the reasons that legal tech is not widely adopted in local law firms is that the government made it online for everything. So everything you can do online. You can issue a power of attorney online. You can buy and sell properties online. You can file cases. The last time I remember I set foot in a court was, believe it or not, before COVID. So I'm a litigator, and I haven't been in court since before COVID. So it is that advanced currently, and maybe this is one of the reasons that legal tech is not needed. I don't know, or there is something.
I would argue, Omar, that is legal tech. The fact that it's embedded and perhaps even not discussed as legal tech. If it's easy to obtain a power of attorney rather than by going to a lawyer and by having the service online, that for me is legal tech at its best. It shouldn't be up there in lights. It should just be oiling the wheels, enabling the service to be delivered. Amir and then Jack.
Yeah, look, totally agree. Look, I think in Saudi, very interestingly, the government is well ahead of the private sort of sector, and absolutely there are so many services, as Omar alluded to, that are online. The Ministry of Justice, and I worked a little bit with the Ministry of Justice and their vision in regards to what they want to do and how they service, B2B or B2C in terms of legal services. Everything's digitized, from having a marketplace, of having an online bid, of having a matter management system, having e-billing, all integrated into this mega platform that's what the vision, that's what they want to drive. And I speak to law firms, and the biggest law firms in Riyadh, these are the local firms, they don't have any of that tech. But I do think at some point that will move. And at the moment, lots of vendors aren't in Saudi for a number of reasons. One of them being the cloud is still a bit of a challenge. AWS isn't fully there. Microsoft isn't fully there. There is lots of work being done. I was at Leap, Saudi, one of the biggest conferences, 160,000 people earlier in the year in Riyadh, and the head of AWS was there. They're investing $6 billion in the kingdom over the next 3 years. It's coming, but it's not fully there. And if we think about lots of solutions that we work with, Richard, on the data debate, a lot of them are in the cloud, and I think there is that challenge. And I think sort of vendors, when I speak to some of the legal technology vendors, some of them are making that move to the region, and they are, they're doing on-prem. As an example, there's an e-billing provider that's going, on-prem as well as that sort of cloud. And I think that's where, I think it's just going to take a little bit of time for everyone to catch up. But I do think that will absolutely happen in the very near future.
Thank you very much. Before I go to you, Jack, to say to those of you who are watching and listening in, do please drop questions in the Q&A, because we'll leave about 10, 12 minutes at the end for questions. But Jack, you were wanting to respond, I think, to Omar.
Yeah, I think, well, it's a more general point, including picking up on something Omar said. I think the evolution of legal tech is unevenly distributed, and I think the dynamics are different. I think there's, I think if you talk about the justice side, Omar has well articulated the kind of the progress that's been made with online courts, for example. Whereas I think within the ministries themselves, their own legal teams, the work will predominantly be done in Arabic, which I think then creates limitations on the supply side, some of which, Amir, you kind of alluded to. I think then as it comes to the in-house legal departments, I think you have got a significant difference between what's happening with the giga projects versus perhaps what's happening in the sort of fully kind of private sector. Whereas again, I just think the speed of execution required within the giga projects cannot be fulfilled without legal tech. So I think you might get a very different answer to where legal tech is being adopted and at what pace, depending on the dynamics, depending on the language of origination that's being used within the system. So it's very unevenly distributed.
Really helpful. Thank you. Catherine, I wonder if you want to come back in response to Laura. Do you feel less incentivized, do you think, in the region to deploy technology than other places in the world? Or is this, for you, a potential source of competitive advantage?
I was going to say exactly that. I was thinking, no, I'm quite delighted if nobody else wants to do it. I'm quite happy to be getting on with it and using legal tech that we have devised elsewhere for our clients. I can definitely see the challenges, and I'm not underestimating or reducing what Laura says, and I do agree there's an element, totally an element of that. But I think, and you and I have got a great friend who has a wonderful saying, who I keep pinching his words, which if you don't like change, and you might even be able to finish this for me, you'll like irrelevance even less. And I live my life by that statement, which, as we know, Alistair says a lot, but I think it's true. And there is the speed of change, and a lot of change is happening in the kingdom. And I think there's enough of an incentive to it to suggest that those who do want to do it should go ahead and seize the day. And if there are others who don't want to, then that gives me a competitive advantage, definitely.
And so, what you're saying in many ways, the market, as the demand for legal services, as the need for legal services burgeons, the market will look after this to some extent. I would imagine those law firms that can respond more quickly, more effectively, in a high-tech way as time goes by and the commitment to technology increases, will be able to compete more effectively. I want to change direction now a little bit, and Omar, you're going to take the stage, as it were. We've touched on a little bit, but I'd like to focus now on dispute resolution. And there's a couple of things that if you're able to cover. On the one hand, how it is that large-scale litigation is handled and the extent to which technology and other innovations are coming into play. I'd also be interested in the more specific question of access to justice for individuals and the extent to which this is being improved or enabled through technology. Omar.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Like I said, that currently everything in relation to the workflow of a legal case with a court is completely online. You can file a case, exchange memorandums, even filing appeal, filing for enforcement. Everything is happening online completely. Not only that, it's also, as I mentioned, for the notarization and etc. This applies to all type of legal case. Maybe an exception is criminal cases, which has special treatment. But this is the case with small or even large scale cases. So it's all happening completely online. And this is if we talk about how this is going to impact make it easier for the public in terms of access to justice. I can give you an example. In one of the banks that I worked with in the past, we noticed an uptick in the number of legal cases, sudden increase. And when we examined this, we understood this is the reason of the adoption by technology in the banking court in Saudi Arabia. So it's much easier for anyone to file a legal case for any individual. It was as easy as filing a complaint with the bank. So this is how easy now is to have an access to court. Not only that, for example, in financing contracts, central bank made a standard contracts for most of the customer related financing documents. So this make it more efficient to manage it at a court level and also to issue legal precedents in that regard. So standardization with adoption of technology and widening slowly the type of contracts that are standardized now. All housing rental contracts are digitized, standardized, and you can imagine how easy now is to solve such type of contracts and how easier for the public to have access to justice. In addition to that, maybe it's a little bit far off from answering your question, but I think this is going to generate vast amount of data. So imagine that before COVID until now, how much data that courts have already generated. And this is a key component for any advanced technology like AI. So I think you can just leave it to your imagination and what the potential of technology in the court system in Saudi.
Many thanks for that. Can I ask you one specific question? You've talked about how much of the process is now conducted online. How were these changes brought about? How were these disputes resolved previously? Are you saying the rules have been changed so that oral hearings are no longer in some cases necessary? Has the old rule book been thrown out? How did you transition to what sounds like a very sophisticated series of online processes and online courts from what was presumably a few years ago a fairly traditional court system?
Well, the rules are the same. And in terms of court hearing are virtual, so it's not without a physical judge. The physical judge is but virtual.
By video then?
By video, yes. And this is what I mean by online court, maybe. But I think a complete online court will happen soon, and with especially in some type of disputes, with if you already have a standard contract, disputes will be almost the same. And if you apply, for example, something like legal triage, will make it possible even to solve a dispute without a judge. And we have seen this with notary.
That's really interesting. During COVID, of course, if you look at remotecourts.org, the website, you see 176 countries moved online to video hearings. Most actually have gone back to the old ways of working. You seem to have consolidated, moved in the different, and you're not alone. In my view, a number of innovative jurisdictions have held that this is an important way of making justice more accessible. By and large, lawyers and judges like it less, but clients like it more, and court users like it more. Did anyone want to add to that picture of litigation and dispute resolution? No takers in that, but Omar, that's a fascinating snapshot for us. Jack.
Well, just a slightly different point on in the litigation context, Richard. We've seen some really interesting use cases for generative AI where there seems to be a greater focus on using technology not just to process litigation cases more quickly, and particularly in a kind of mass, in a sort of mass litigation kind of context, but actually to do more work on root cause analysis to actually see, how they can kind of focus on reducing litigation claims altogether. There's a much greater focus on the kind of the business outcome, or improving the business outcome rather than just reducing the cost of litigation.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You see a lot of that in the insurance industry where they're using past data to identify trends, regularities, patterns, and optimum time for settling, optimum time for progressing. But this is why what Omar was saying about the data is very interesting, because you will have deep insight into the patterns of dispute in the country. I also think, incidentally, a lot of people respond to say there's been lots more disputes, saying that's a more litigious society. I don't think that at all. I think that's access to justice being improved, because if people have enforceable rights, they should be able to enforce them. And they're inhibited in many jurisdictions because it's unaffordable or unintelligible. Let me, before we open for a few questions, just go to a final and general issue, which we've touched on to some extent. And I suppose we can discuss this at two levels. It's about the way in which the kingdom may see through technology a source of global competitive advantage. And that is playing out in the global economy, as well as what I want to reflect on is the extent to which, maybe, Omar, this is true in perhaps plans for the court system, that the use of technology itself within the court system could be seen to be a distinctive characteristic. And indeed, I don't know if there are aspirations to build the kingdom as a global center for dispute resolution. I've troubled you too much over the last few minutes, so you can take a breath, and I'll ask if anyone else has views either at a high level, the strategic positioning of AI and technology in the overall plan of the country as opposed of the kingdom, or the potential role of technology as a differentiator. Catherine, why don't we just start off with you?
I think the only thing I would add, and quite a lot has been drawn out about the position of Saudi. I think what I found quite interesting in preparing today is their role as ensuring that there's ethical AI, and going to into what is meant. So in September they held a conference here, which I think it was called GAIN. And when they were launching that, they were launching being champions of ethical AI. And again, as well as awards that Saudi have won, they are also on the UN Committee for Ethical AI. So I think the whole development and that champion, and being a part of that, I think, is another competitive edge point, just taking your point of being a global champion to how AI is developed and used. There was a report done, a study done recently by the Legal Center for Research in Saudi. And I think what's quite interesting, and nobody's also is talking about tech and talking about legal tech, but they have also used that to kind of look at the ethics of, are you going to have a robot judge one day? And actually possibly not, and they're not ready for that. And the results of the study was kind of like, well, look, we'll use AI to assist in the process, in the court process, and it's there to clear out a lot of the boring process-driven stuff, to free up judges, for example, to cogitate, ruminate on, the big questions, but they couldn't necessarily at the present see there being a robot AI judge. So I think that's quite interesting as to they're already addressing those thoughts, even if they're saying they're not ready for it, but championing ethical and thinking of the full gamut of what AI could do for a judiciary, which I think is interesting.
Thank you, Catherine. Amir, how do you perceive technology, AI, and legal technology and legal innovation in the overall aspiration of the kingdom as a significant global economy and society?
Yeah, look, I think as we've talked about, I think, yeah, sort of technology is fundamental to everything that the kingdom wants to achieve. The 2030, the 2040 vision. I think they understand and they appreciate that technology is going to be a huge enabler for that vision. And yeah, undoubtedly they are making great sort of strides in sort of across the board on many things, where they we talked about some of the work that the government, the Ministry of Justice are doing. There isn't a lot of ministries around the world that have that capability right now, and that's what they want. They want to be a leader in things that they haven't, from a technology perspective, that they've been, quite frankly, quite behind over the years. But now they are going to leapfrog a lot of other sort of organizations, countries that haven't sort of reached that, and they're doing that at phenomenal, like Jack talks about, a phenomenal pace to be able to have that vision, and then the hope is they can execute on that vision. But look, they've got all the right things. They've got the right partnerships with the big technology organizations. They've got the investment. They have quite a lot of money themselves. So and they've got that willingness. Back to the people aspect. We know to bring in tech and to bring in change, you need people to embrace and to be able to do that. Well, yes, because they've got quite a young population, that also helps in terms of embracing that change and that technology. So yeah, look, it's fascinating. It's very exciting times. I think being in as I've been in Saudi a couple of times, you really feel, I know everyone says that, the buzz around the place, but there is that buzz. Something big is happening, and a lot of people want to be involved and sort of shaping what the future of Saudi is going to be. Is going to be a very exciting journey.
Thank you. We're going to go Laura, Jack, Omar, and then take a couple of questions. So Laura, your overall sense strategically of the significance of what we've been discussing.
Yeah, we haven't spoken about SDAIA, Saudi Data and Artificial Intelligence Authority. Going back to what we discussed about, what Catherine said about ethical AI, SDAIA issued its guidance on ethical AI. And Saudi Arabia is one of the countries in the Middle East that has a robust data privacy law. For example, UAE has a data privacy law, but the implementing regulations are not out yet. In Saudi Arabia, there is a data privacy law. It's enacted. And plus the artificial intelligence, the SDAIA, the Saudi Data and Artificial Intelligence Authority, issued these guidelines to set out exactly what it means to deploy ethical or responsible artificially intelligent systems. So in that sense, I think Saudi is doing a really good job in covering their basics. So they're not just throwing money at it. They have the foundation, and their laws are in order, and they're taking it seriously. One thing that I see as that is a bit of an issue is the fact that they have restrictions around data export out of Saudi Arabia, as you know. Personal data, for example, cannot leave the country. But other than that, I think the laws are in place. The population is eager to implement technology, and the country has its strategy in place. Yeah.
Fascinating. Jack and then Omar.
Well, just briefly, I think it's central to the whole geopolitical repositioning of Saudi Arabia. And if you look at the way AI is central to all of their really ambitious projects, whether it's their smart city, the new smart cities they're building, whether it's the electric vehicle industry, their ambitions in the space industry, it's central to everything. And I think that just more and more will trickle down into the into the legal system as well. I think it's just we talk to general counsel who are surrounded by the sort of vision and whatever it is they're building. And again, I'm talking specifically, it's more around some of the kind of the PIF portfolio, but it's kind of infectious. And they say, well, look, we want to be the best legal department in the world, the most technologically enabled. We want to be the most advanced users of generative AI. Now there are barriers to it, which we have talked about, but I think it's absolutely kind of central to the future, and it's incredibly exciting.
Thank you, Omar. You're running the anchor leg, as we say in athletics.
Thank you. I just want to add one thing. Maybe we didn't discuss that. Overall, in the government, they focus on efficiency, KPIs, tracking performance, monitoring performance, and courts are not an exception. And we understand that judges are evaluated based on certain KPIs. So how legal operation is adopted at the court level. And we have seen how this have impacted the workflow of cases that used to be dragged for many years now can be done or closed in few months. We started to see very quick and efficient court system. Maybe this is a double sword type of thing. Maybe this will encourage judges just to close without much of deliberation, but at least we are seeing efficiency. So the competitive advantage in Saudi Arabia is not only at the technology level, but also at the operational level.
That's fascinating. Can we bring Francis back in and perhaps give us a couple of questions? We've got 8 or 9 minutes to run. Welcome back, Francis.
Thank you, and an absolutely fascinating discussion. And one of the questions I think which is quite interesting is there's a couple coming which has come in from Jennifer Swallow, actually, who's joined us. So hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer.
So the first question is, to what degree is regulation of legal services having an impact on innovation in the kingdom, and also looking at the government policy and support on this?
Who would like to take us through that one? The regulation. Oh, I'm glad I'm not been asked to answer that one, but the specific regulations governing legal services in the kingdom. Hands up. I think I saw Omar's shoulder move, which I take as a hand. Yeah.
Good luck.
Take it away, Omar. To what extent is it restrictive or liberalized?
I'm sorry, I wasn't following. Can you mention the question again?
The question is, or the issue is this, that there is in some people's minds a linkage between the extent to which legal technology is used and law firms are innovative on the one hand, and the extent to which jurisdictions are liberalized in the other, liberalized in a number of ways. One, that non-lawyers, perhaps technology companies, can participate in the delivery of legal services, liberalized to a second extent, which we've discussed, which is that foreign lawyers are allowed to practice. So there is a view to which I tend to subscribe, that the more liberalized the jurisdiction, the better chance in the long term it will have.
Yeah, I totally agree. And maybe one of the reasons that legal tech, apart from what's happening in the core system, that private sector is not adopted because maybe the legal practice is not liberalized yet. So, and I hope that we can see something like sandboxes in the legal tech, like what we have witnessed at the fintech sandboxes adopted by central bank, which led a boom in fintech, and now we see few unicorns in the fintech startups. Maybe the issue, I think, of trying to liberalize the legal practice a little bit, I think this can help a lot in adoption of legal technology.
Thank you. Amir, was your hand up there, or were you just resting your...
No, I was just resting, fidgeting.
Okay.
But thanks.
I misinterpreted the signals. Thank you for that answer. Francis, another question?
Yeah, so again, Eslam, thank you. I saw a hand going up by one of our listeners, which was Eslam Meza. He's put a question in, and I thought he might want to come in live. So his question is, this is actually a question for Laura. You mentioned something related to the legal consultations in Saudi. My question is, I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, mainly you refer to data protection law related concerns. So do you have examples about the challenges that you noticed regarding that? And also then one for Jack, if he wanted to add something to the back of that.
Laura.
All right, the issues around data protection laws. The issue that I see is around the data restrictions around data export. This is a problem that all the global companies are having in Saudi Arabia, and that's one of the reasons why it is becoming difficult. I mean, that's one of the things that is making it difficult for foreign companies to do business in Saudi Arabia. It's because if you have personal data, you cannot send it outside of the country. What is export is actually not very clear in the law. In one place, it says transfer is defined as access. In other places, it's just mentioned as transfer. So if you're, for example, using people outside of the country to do part of your work, there you have to be careful about how you do it. So if you're doing any online work, it becomes a problem in Saudi Arabia. But from the legal tech perspective, I guess it would be an issue if you're using law firms outside of the country. But then again, there's another issue. Government data cannot leave the country. And most of the work in Saudi Arabia is government work. So government owns a lot of entities. Like, for example, NEOM belongs to the government. PIF is a government entity. To what extent their data needs to stay in the country? STC is a government entity. SEC is a government entity. So how do you keep their data in the country? It is a bit problematic. Like, for example,
Laura, I'm going to stop you there.
Yeah.
It's been a great answer, but I'm very conscious of time. I'd love to get one more question in. Forgive me. Francis, I was just looking at the questions, and someone asked, it was Jennifer again, could you share a couple of examples of how Islamic principles are impacting the use of technology? Omar, I wondered if you wanted briefly to make some observations on that, or indeed
Well,
anyone.
Yeah, Sharia principles in general, they promote creativity and innovation, and if this is clear in many of the Sharia principles. So as a basics, yes, it is encouraging creativity and innovation, and also adoption of technology.
Would anyone else like to add to that? It's actually a really good place to stop. I wanted to say a couple of words by way of conclusion. I confess, to this webcast with far less knowledge than I now have. But I have, as I travel the world, I get some sense of some countries that seems to me are showing great promise, and others who are perhaps maybe leveling out when it comes to technology. I've emerged with the conclusion from this discussion that the kingdom really is a very interesting place to watch for legal technology, because there's so many pieces in place. The overall commitment to AI and technology, the putting the clear evidence support of the government, the infrastructure in place, the demand that we've heard that Laura mentioned, for example, that there is great, huge demand for legal services. We heard from Jack as well about in-house counsel needing to automate, and Catherine giving us some sense of how it is that foreign law firms may add some competitive spirit here. Amir and Jack, their observations too, all lead me to think that we should realistically expect some great uses of legal technology. If I put it stronger, I think for the kingdom to achieve its overall goals, it will need to have a legal system, and that includes a legal profession, a dispute resolution system, a legislative system that is increasingly enabled and powered through technology. And everything I'm hearing is suggesting that, certainly from the government, who are driving the innovation, that this is a very likely possibility. So I'm really going to pay much more attention to what's happening in Saudi. Completely fascinating. Jack, Catherine, Omar, Amir, Laura, thank you so much. Back to you, Francis, just to say goodbye on behalf of our host, NetLaw Media.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Richard, for chairing this so well. Omar, Catherine, Amir, Jack, Laura, thank you so much for joining us and giving your input and giving everyone an insight into what's happening in Saudi Arabia. For everyone who's listening, more will be coming in the new year as we're leading up into Christmas. So I wish everyone happy holidays and also a Merry Christmas. So thank you for joining us today.